Okay, everybody, welcome back. The one thing that I want to talk about in this video, well, I'm going to give it a bit of a precursor so that I can, arrive at it myself. I watched Mulan for the first time the other day, and I guess this is, I have to pull the curtain back even further here, because growing up, I just didn't watch Disney movies. I was under the impression that anything Disney related was for girls, and that I wasn't really missing anything by watching it. It's only when I actually go outside and interact with people that it's a universal experience that I kind of missed out on. So in being an older, wiser adult now, taking the time to become more cultured, that's what led me to watching Mulan. The thing about Mulan that was so interesting to me is that the movie begins and she's singing this song about her reflection. The movie really begins and she's trying to make her family proud, trying to, fit all the appearances of a woman in, that society that she's in. I don't know, China maybe? Yeah, she wanted to make her parents proud. She wanted to make her family proud. And really, it wasn't even make them proud. It was more like not let them down. And there's a distinction there between just don't mess up too much. She ends up messing up too much. And she comes back home and she sings the song about reflection and who is the girl I see and the, staring back at me thing. And I mean, it's those little nuances, right? It's not that she wants to make her family proud. It's just that she doesn't want them to be disappointed. She doesn't want to bring dishonor. This reflection song is not about Mulan having an identity crisis as much as it is Mulan looking out into the world and saying, why isn't there anywhere where I can be who I am? And it's interesting because you don't usually get that from a character at the beginning of a movie. Usually they have to kind of grow into it and become who they are and find what they're good at. You have the character who doesn't fit into the gender role, but they are, clearly proficient at other things or something like that, but they have to arrive at that answer. Mulan saying, who's that girl I see staring here back at me? Why doesn't my reflection show the one that I don't know the lyrics, but the essential point of that song is that Mulan is when can I be who I know that I am? And when will people celebrate that? Not really that celebrate that part. I threw that in there. I think the course of the movie breaks down the idea of women breaking through the mold and breaking through the stereotype, really breaking down gender norms and finding the space for you as an individual to be who you're going to be. I guess I've arrived at the one thing I want to talk about. I feel like it's clear that that's a message that women can take away, that girls can take away. And in going to the very top of this story here, where I'm talking about how I'm some, young boy looking at Disney stuff, looking at Disney princess stuff and saying, that's not for me. My overwhelming takeaway coming away from that was that Mulan is for everyone. And I mean, having a basic understanding of marketing and things like that, that's kind of the point. But it's difficult to explain to a 6, 7, 8-year-old boy, watch these Disney princesses, you could learn something from them. But the interesting thing is, there was one part of Mulan that I had known so much about, had engaged with so many times over the course of my childhood growing up, all the way up to before I watched the movie. And it was that Be a Man song, where Shang, the tough teacher, recently got put in charge by his father / the, leader of the military thing. He's training all these young cadets because there was a draft, because the Huns were attacking China. And as I say the story, it's all coming back to me that the Huns were attacking China because they climbed the Great Wall of China at the beginning of the movie. I listened to this Be a Man song all the time. And then I don't know if I ever, took a song too seriously. I tend not to take my life advice from music. Well, there are some times where you feel like it resonates very much with your life, And I'm sure there were lessons of masculinity that I kind of took from it. And it's interesting because that's exactly what this song is. This song is a training montage to show the evolution of these scrubs and the people who couldn't do anything as far as a military goes, and showing them becoming a military, or as the song says, a gazillion times, becoming a man. So that was a lot of talking to say that the one thing that I want to focus on, if I didn't say it already, which I hope I did because I'm staring at, the speaking time thing here and it's already at 6 minutes. I'm probably going to cut this video a bit so it won't be as bad as I feel right here. I'm also filibustering here as I talk, so it's actually getting longer and longer between
What is he babbling about?
And I'll just come out and say it now. The one thing that I want to focus on is how Mulan actually breaks like women and men tropes. And it's a cheat because I have an and within my one thing statement. And I already talked about the women part, I think. I feel like I've done that justice. I think the movie overall does that justice. But this is this part about like even going at men gender norms is interesting. So I have pulled up here the Be a Man song lyrics because I think that some of the language that's used here is so interesting. And ultimately, Mulan kind of circumvents the gender norms for men in quote unquote becoming a man and becoming a successful soldier and becoming the best soldier of her group. You know, I'm not a power scaler, but you know, it's like Shang really grows to respect Mulan, which is something we'll talk about a little later. But I'll just call out some of the lyrics that were really interesting to me. So in this song, Shang kind of takes a break them down to build them back up mentality. He begins the thing by saying, you know, did they send me daughters when I asked for sons? Calls them the saddest bunch, says they're spineless and pale. And when it comes to explaining what it means to be a man, what's interesting there is that he refers to nature a lot. Tranquil as a forest, but on fire within. First of all, I think the image of that is really interesting. And it's the idea that you're supposed to be quiet, calm, composed, but also on fire. And fire actually comes up a little later in the song too. But, and we'll get to that when we get to the chorus, because that's really where the nature stuff comes in a lot. But even if you just imagine that, right? You imagine tranquil as a forest. So, you know, you got the trees and everything. I'm painting a picture with my words here. And then boom, it bursts into flames. But the idea is that despite the flames, you're calm anyway. You're tranquil anyway. You at least portray tranquility. And then after breaking them down, we get all the characters, you know, I'm never going to catch my breath, say goodbye to those who knew me, right? All that stuff. And then you get to the chorus, which is really where it's interesting to me, for me. And where I'll kind of break from it and get back into how Mulan actually breaks men gender norms and becomes a successful soldier. So let's get to the chorus. We must be swift as a coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon. So when it comes to being a man, when it comes to, I mean, even like, there's an interesting humanity piece here too, where it's you're pulling on all the elements of nature to make up man. You have to be swift like a coursing river, force of a great typhoon, strength of a raging fire. And those three are interesting, and I want to focus on those and separate it from the dark side of the moon thing, because those are external. This is how strong you have to be. This is what we're seeing. They're you know, shooting the arrow and running across the logs over the river and fishing with their hand and doing all these different things that they have to do in order to train their bodies to be strong. Now, he mentions the tranquil as a forest, on fire within, but what really strikes me here is, you know, of course, we go back to that fire, right? The raging fire. I think it really goes to this idea in conversations about men and how men are portrayed, and this is why I think it's so interesting that Mulan actually circumvents all of this, because what Shang is saying here is you need to be strong, you need to be angry, and you need to be able to control that anger and turn it into something. You need to be able to tap into that rage when you need more strength. The idea that you're a man, you have one emotion. You're tranquil as a forest, but you're on fire within. You can always draw the strength of the raging fire and manifest it and be greater from a physicality perspective. And I mean, this film was made in the late 1990s. That's coming up on 30 years ago, believe it or not. And I just think that's so interesting, because I think it's something that, you know, I think the definition of masculinity, gender in general, is evolving, but I can't say we're in a place yet where this doesn't apply to most men in my life, to myself included. You know, in your loneliest thoughts, your subconscious thoughts, like what's my motivating factor for doing what I'm doing right here? Is it, you know, I need to be strong. I need to appear calm. I need to tap into my rage. Is my rage the symbol of manhood here? Because I think that's one of the things Shang is trying to get across. And It's interesting as I think about it now. Shang is up against it, right? He's 3 weeks to train these nobodies into somebody so that he can go to battle with them against the Huns. So I think he's taking a bit of a rough approach, but to that, the counterpoint, I did watch the movie. They said Shang was a really good teacher. He knows all the teaching skills. Now, that was his dad saying that, but I think this is the way that they taught soldiers. This was probably the way that Shang was taught. I'm not even going to dive into, Shang's backstory and everything. Like, I don't know it. I just know that that's his dad, and Shang's the guy saying, be a man. The one thing that really struck me is it's not just this rage, it's mysterious as the dark side of the moon. So the flip side, all the other emotions, the things that are going on, you need to portray tranquility and also remain mysterious. Mysterious to me, I'm gonna substitute that with emotionally distant. Don't let people know what you're thinking, and you better not let people know what you're feeling. One thing I just want to say as I move away from the song Be a Man and the lyrics here is when Shang, and this is just a separate thing, just like vocally, and I may even play this part despite being kind of afraid that Disney's going to, shoot this video down before it ever gets up and does anything. When Shang is talking to Mulan, at the beginning I was saying that he's kind of tearing everybody down, but for some reason he really like 2 foots Mulan. You're unsuited for on the it's you're through, that was disgusting stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that as I move away from the Be a Man song and more to how Mulan actually overcomes all this stuff. Not even overcomes it, right? Mulan just kind of like, I'm just gonna be me. One idea I had for this video, as I kind of veer in a lot of different directions, one idea I had for this video was it was going to be about living life in perpetual motion. And the idea that once Mulan decides, I'm going to go to war to protect my father, she doesn't have a choice of who is in the reflection. Because life is moving so quickly, she has to act based on instinct. And I think it's such an interesting story to tell, because a lot of times we give advice to people who are struggling with their identity, and we say, well, just be yourself. And I think this is what being yourself is like. That's why it's so hard to be yourself, because it's not just be yourself in one moment. It's not arrive at who you are and that's who it is for the rest of life. It's fluid. And the fluidity of this story makes it so that Mulan is always herself, whether she's portraying a man or a woman. She is Mulan. She is coming up with ideas that Mulan would come up with. She is consistent to who she is. My mind always goes back to this scene when I think about how Mulan really undercut, or not undercut, but really overcame any gender norms from either side. And it's really when the Huns are coming and it's the avalanche and everything like that. But Mulan causing the avalanche, that Be a Man song doesn't say anything about being smart, about using your brain, about being a tactician. I don't think Shang was expecting that from anybody, but Mulan is able to grab the firework thing, shoot it into the mountain, sink the Huns, and basically save everybody's lives because they were done for and nobody would have ever heard from them ever again. Like, being at war is scary. I don't know who needs to know that, but it's pretty scary stuff. And I'm not speaking from experience, but I watched a movie from 30 years ago about
what
war.
Is he babbling about?
War is scary. That's essentially it. I kind of taken the long route for this because there was a lot I wanted to say about Mulan. The more I talk, the more I realize that this channel is just kind of a cheat. I say I'm going to talk about one thing, and then it ends up being multiple things, but hopefully there's some, driving narrative here that can carry me all the way through, and hopefully this video makes sense. One thing I'm trying to improve at is because a lot of these videos are about the song Be a Man. When we think about gender norms and everything like that, I get really curious about Shang towards the end of the movie. He learns that Mulan is a woman and initially doesn't want to talk to her. This is right after the avalanche scene where Shang is like to Mulan, but Mulan is still portraying a man. Mulan, you saved my life, I trust you, all these things like that. Like, Shang is just like in awe of Mulan and her ability to save the day. Of course, his ability, because Mulan was portraying a man at the time, whatever. I guess my question is like, and this is like a weird question, like, why do you even care? But like, when does Shang start to like Mulan? I don't know. I'm kind of stumped on that one because the Emperor kind of says to Shang at the end of the movie, like, there's only a few girls like that, and that's when Shang kind of comes to her house and brings the helmet and does all that stuff. I mean, and there are lots of elements to liking and loving someone. I'm just curious, was that like, Shang, thank you so much for saving my life, I trust you? Like, what's the bridge? Was it just that learning Mulan was a woman was like, okay, the other chemicals in my brain are now activating to say that I should, romantically pursue this? Or was that a feeling that occurred before? It's ultimately a question we'll never get an answer to, but it was just something I was thinking about as, this entire conversation is really about identity and like bursting into reality and being who you are the entire time. Nobody is freer than Mulan, and Mulan kind of does that. She forces herself to do that, and it's kind of like imposing her will on reality. And so I think that's a really like great lesson that I was kind of blown away from and haven't been able to put into words, besides the idea that she lives in perpetual motion. And maybe that's the key to, being yourself, because that's not a question that I don't think people ask a lot. It's like, said it before, people always say, oh, be yourself, that'll figure itself out. But how? How do I be myself? How do I do that all the time? How do I do that every day? And I think it's just a matter of like, challenge yourself, push yourself, put yourself in situations, and then answer your questions and make mistakes and let people down and betray them and fall in love a little bit and, save lives and, put lives in danger, like all of it, do all of it. And I think it's not even a matter of learning who you are. It's just your body will react. Your instincts will react in a certain way. And I'm not talking like fight or flight stuff. I'm talking like behavior that comes from personality. Anyway, that's enough about that. That's one thing about Mulan. Thanks for watching.